every week. I was responsible for finding the funny messages and would put a chart together for the facility operator with the date the sign was to be changed and what it would say. I would prepare the chart weeks in advance, and at one point, I ran out of ideas, so on one of the dates I put TBD, and completely forgot that I had done that, and handed him the chart. Lo and behold, a few weeks later, as I was driving towards the church, I looked up at the sign outside, and you probably know where I'm going with this, saw the sign, and it literally read TBD. I couldn't stop laughing and wondered what everybody who drove by thought. And it was on a major street. I'm not going to say which one because then you would know what church it was. What everybody thought as they drove by this church and saw TBD on the sign. I love funny church signs. You can Google them and read signs like "Need a lifeguard? Ours walks on water." "Honk if you love Jesus, text while driving if you want to meet him." "Too cold to change sign, come inside." And finally, oh no, not finally, I have two more. "I was addicted to the hokey pokey, but I turned myself around." And this is finally, "Tweet others as you would like to be tweeted." Church signs are interesting and can say a lot about a community. The one I find most fascinating and most simply stated is "All are welcome, Sunday service, 10:30 a.m. All are welcome, Sunday service, 10:30 a.m. Simply stated, but not a simple statement. Think about it. All are welcome. This morning in our gospel, we have two stories of two people who were not actually all that welcome. Two outsiders in society at that time. Previously in the gospel, Jesus took to task the Pharisees and scribes for their ideas of purity and their judgment of those who did not conform to their standards of cleanliness. Now, as if to prove his point, he heads off into impure territory, the Gentile region of Tyre. Jesus is tired and seeking some downtime. He entered a house and did not want anyone to know he was there, but he could not escape notice, even in this region. The woman approaches Jesus and breaks through every traditional barrier that should prevent her from doing so. She's a woman, a Gentile of Syrophoenician origin. In other words, she's implicitly impure, one who lives outside of the land of Israel and outside of the law of Moses. She's a woman unaccompanied by a husband or male relative who initiates a conversation with a strange man. And to make matters worse, her daughter is ill in the eyes of society at the time. Any way you look at it, this woman is an outsider. When the woman falls at his feet, begging him to heal her daughter, Jesus says, "Let the children," meaning the children of Israel, "be fed first. For it is not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs," meaning other people. Jesus seems to have been caught with his compassion down. His response is harsh. How could he say such a thing? How rude. Some interpreters suggest that Jesus is testing the woman to tease out her affirmation of faith. Others suggest that here we see the very human side of Jesus, exhausted and needing a break. Or perhaps not yet understanding the scope of his own mission. I'm not sure about that one. While we cannot know exactly what Jesus was thinking, it is clear that when approached by the Syrophoenician woman, Jesus' immediate response is to appeal to the limits of his mission, his call to serve his own people. But this mother doesn't give up and cleverly responds, "Sir, even the little dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs." Jesus can only agree, and she goes home to find her daughter healed. Jesus agrees that God's love and healing power know no ethnic, political, or social boundaries. She moved from exclusion to inclusion in the eyes of God's love. In other words, all are welcome. From Tyre, Jesus heads off to the region of the Decapolis, also Gentile territory. Who knows? Maybe he's still seeking to escape notice and to rest a bit. Or perhaps he has a new vision of his mission beyond the borders of his home territory. It doesn't really matter because once again, escaping notice proves impossible. They brought to him a deaf man who also had an impediment in his speech, and they begged him to lay his hand on him. Like the woman, this man is also an outsider. He's cut off from the world by his inability to hear and communicate with others. This time, in a very earthy scene, Jesus puts his fingers in the man's ears, spits and touches his man's tongue, and then says, "Be opened." And the man is able to hear and communicate with those around him. Not only is he physically healed, he's also restored to his community. He too has moved from exclusion to inclusion. In other words, all are welcome. I think these two stories are especially appropriate for this Sunday. For right or for wrong, this Sunday marks the beginning of the program year for many congregations, because it also marks the beginning of the school year. September invites us to focus on our congregational life and activities, and to think about our mission, to think about who we are as followers of Jesus as a Christian community. Like Jesus himself, his disciples, and each of us are continually called to a larger vision or mission, one that aims to embrace the outsider and the stranger, and those who have perhaps felt excluded. This week marks the return to some of your regular programming, as the choir has returned. Thank you, great to see you. Okay, the children's song would have returned, but I didn't think it was fair to try it out with one child, and certainly David, Frida, and I weren't doing a trio at the back, although I had everything down. Yep. The Zoom congregation in Yonge has returned. Welcome, everybody. And your wardens and volunteers have started thinking about fall programming, like the Harvest on the Hill. The Blessing of the Animals service is scheduled for October 6th. Did I get the date right? I did. October 6th at 12 noon. There's going to be a baptism on Thanksgiving weekend, and the Thanksgiving dinner will hopefully be set the date tonight. And I'm sure there are other celebrations being thought about as well. I think our gospel text this morning might just be the perfect text for the start of this church year, because it reminds all of us of the vastness of God's love. That is exactly what the world needs to hear. And I think it's what we need to hear, especially during this interim time. In the Gospel of Mark, one of the greatest things is that no one can keep quiet about Jesus, his healing, and his love. In the Anglican Book of Common Prayer, there's a prayer called the Prayer of Humble Access. Any of you remember it? Wow. Oh, okay, one person. Okay, a couple people. You guys are just shy. You're not used to me yelling out stuff like that. Okay. It begins with the words, I'm not going to say the whole prayer. Begins with the words, "We do not presume to come to this thy table, O merciful Lord, trusting in our own righteousness, but in thy manifold and great mercies. We are not worthy so much as to gather up the crumbs under thy table, but thou art the same Lord, whose property is always, always to have mercy." like the Syrophoenician woman, we may not feel worthy of God's mercy. That's okay, because our reading this morning and that beautiful prayer remind us that no matter how broken we are all welcome. We, being many, are one body, for we all share in the one bread. So yes, church signs are interesting and can say a lot about a community. And the one I find most fascinating is all are welcome. Sunday service, 10:30. God bless the church community who believe, and the church sign that says, all are welcome. The sign may be simply stated, but it is definitely not a simple statement. It is a statement that needs to be lived into each and every day. In fact, in many ways, I think it's a mission statement. I've heard it from many here, and I've felt it myself since being here. It's not on your sign, but I think you're living it here. Thanks be to God. Amen.